Hello.
Hey.
Hi.
Evening.
I wonder if
Shall
we
we
should
start? Or
Yeah,
should we wait a little more?
no, let's start. So regarding this HTTP module, you know, we have this idea to write these hyperbindings and kind of make this native, right? So is it even worth discussing this? Because I think we kind of want to change this API, right?
Yeah. Like I think this is going to be a Deno namespace API, so this whole module is probably going to go.
What about the file server, though?
Yeah, I can imagine that the file server still remains. Yeah, it's
actually
just,
looking
it's
at
just,
this.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say I was just going to say that the file server is probably fine, but I'm just a bit worried that we would want to leave ourselves room for improvement when we go and refactor this HTTP server API.
Yeah, let's just postpone it then, I guess.
Yeah, there's like 3 APIs here, which I think maybe make a little bit of sense. The cookie functions, the set cookie, get cookie, and delete cookie. Because, yeah, they don't really have any alternative APIs. And they already take a headers object, so.
Yeah, seems reasonable. And that headers object is the fetch header, the web standard headers object. Yeah. So maybe we should just punt on this whole. I mean, I'm fine with talking about the cookies thing, but I kind of think we should punt on the other stuff, including the file server, even though that is fairly distinct. Although, is that even in here? I'm not seeing that.
Yeah, that's like HTTP/file server.
Oh, this is mod TS. Got it.
And that I'm pretty sure that does have a public API. It could also export a function to start the server.
Yeah, it's a function as well as a CLI.
So should we skip most of this module and just focus on the cookies and the file server?
You're muted, Ryan.
Well, let's definitely skip server TS. I don't know. Yeah, probably cookies and file server we can discuss. We can probably discuss HTTP status too. I'm not sure if there's an equivalent. If that, I think that's just data, right? So that should probably be fine.
Yeah.
Seems fine to me.
Yeah.
I don't think we need this reverse mapping table though, because request I think should provide that out of the box. I'm sure implementation doesn't, but I think it should. If you create a new response with a certain status, you can call status text on that, and it should give you back the status text. But I don't think our implementation does that.
Right.
But I think spec says it should. Let me check.
I mean, it's fine having a lookup table. I mean, why not?
Sure.
Excuse me.
Okay, so let's start with the cookie module.
Yeah.
So we got three functions here: delete, get, and set. So the question is, do all of them need to contain this cookie in the function names? And also, this is get cookies, but we got delete cookie and set cookie. I think that's fine.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And we've got an interface. So I guess this is as strongly typed as can be.
Yeah, I think there's one thing missing here. So
Which is-
cookies have one more attribute. Let me find it. It's the one that can be set to lax. Same size. Oh no, we do have that. Oh, never mind.
It is
Yeah.
here. Yeah, this type cookies, it's a bit strange that this is just an alias to record string. Anyone knows where it might be used? Oh, okay, it's used here. Should it be a type alias? I think for stuff that is, built-in TypeScript types, there's no need to add aliases. It could directly return record string.
Sure.
Actually, well, like cookies and interface, but cookies is a record string. I'm not too sure.
Yeah.
There's two.
Because when you parse cookies from the cookie header, you only get the key and the value, not any of the options.
Yeah, I would say just keep the plain types and ditch the alias.
Yeah, it's only used once, so I don't think it's worth keeping.
Okay, noted. Okay, so set cookie, it takes response, which needs to have headers. I guess this is on purpose, so the response can be used throughout. No need to extract headers yourself.
Yeah. I think like 99% of people will extract and put things right into responses and requests. So, and for the people that need to use headers directly, they need to wrap it in an object.
My question is, why are those methods taking response or request instead of being methods on those objects?
What do you mean?
For example, get cookies, you pass a request. So why is this method not a method on, why is this function not a method on request instead of taking an object that requires to have headers?
Because request is a fetch API, is a web API, and we can't extend it.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. So yeah, the only reservation I have is that there's cookies and cookie in the name, but I guess that's more or less all right. Or anyone else feels like we should change them as well?
No. Like you are getting the record of cookies, and with the other ones, you're just manipulating a single one, so seems fine.
All right. So just yeah.
Well, that's where I was just confused. Like if I read it for the first time because I actually never used it, and it's just the idea of like cookies is an object and cookies an interface. So is there a real reason why they cannot be both the interface, for example? I'm a bit confused about the use case, and there's no example too, so it makes it even harder to understand
Right, yeah,
what
exactly.
we're expecting to do with it.
So the set cookie and delete cookie, they modify the set cookie header on the response, which can take all these options. And the get cookies header gets just the key value pairs from the cookie header, and that doesn't have any of the options. So so it doesn't require. So it can just be a string to string mapping, if that's what you meant.
Well, sure, but I guess there's a better way to explain this than this S that makes barely a difference in everything, but changes actually everything. You know, like cookies as an object. I know we said like, well, maybe we can change it to record string, but which would help. But at least maybe more examples. You know?
Yeah, so
Sure.
actually this method will just like split the key value pairs, but it will not parse the string as a cookie interface.
There is no cookie interface for incoming cookies.
Right.
Because that would just be a value, not an actual.
Okay,
Like
so
these interfaces, those are all options that are sent to the browser and the browser stores. But then when it sends them back, it just sends back the value.
okay, yeah. So we need to update an example for the get cookies function.
I think all
this
of
one's
them, if
pretty.
they. Sorry.
I think this one is pretty much taken from Go, right? Because it looks like the same, as far as I can remember. I just set get and
Also, this same site type, maybe it should just be like defined inline instead of having a separate alias. Like there's probably no point.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the cookie module. Let's see file server then. Okay, so just a single function called serve file, which this looks kind of strange. It should be main method as well.
Yeah, I wonder if this is a bug in our parser. Because I'm pretty sure we test.
No,
main
main
method. No.
function is not exported at all.
Don't we test this in the? Oh, okay, that's very interesting.
I think this is only tested as a sub-process, so as a CLI tool.
no, it has pretty poor coverage. The entire HTTP package does.
Sorry, can you repeat?
It has pretty poor coverage. The entire HTTP package is like 30% tested.
Right, okay. To be honest, is there any reason to export anything from this module? I think this is like a standalone CLI tool.
Well, serve file is kind of useful.
Yeah, I agree. It'll
used
put
that
the right
before.
MIME types there, I think.
Yep. So if you have like a public directory, it's easier we can do it.
Okay, but
Yeah, unfortunately, I mean, I agree that it's useful because often you have a web server and you want to have some dynamic content, and then you want to serve some static directory from some path. But This depends on this server request, which is part of the server interface, which potentially is going to change.
And also, I would be fine if it created a response, but it doesn't do that. It also like opens and stats, and file path is just a string where both of these APIs take URLs as well. So I'd be fine if we were to like rework this function to do this processing and creating a response, but like opening a file and starting it should be probably left to user.
Well, I mean, it is explicitly a file server, so opening the file and getting its content length and returning its contents is like what it does.
Although, like, if you look at the implementation, this isn't even a very good implementation. Ideally, this would stream back the file, but it just copies it all into memory.
That's indeed, yeah.
Does it?
Oh, actually, no, it doesn't. No, never mind. It gets the size from the stat.
Yeah.
Okay. I feel like that content length header is going to get stripped away by the HTTP server if you stream, because it's going to put chunked. I don't know. Whatever.
Maybe not.
Also, what Ryan pointed out, that this server request is an interface from server module, and if the server module goes because of HTTP server and Deno namespace, then this function will need to be reworked. And then one might argue, if serve file is exported, why is serve there not exported? So I'm leaning towards bumping this whole module at the end of the queue once we actually bind HTTP server in Deno. Because obviously HTTP is super important, but we need like solid base and start working from there, adding utilities. So everyone's okay with bumping the whole module? Okay, there was one PR I wanted to mention, but since we'll rework the HTTP server, I think we can skip it as well. Okay.
Yeah. A bit unfortunate, but I think our native HTTP server work is going to come to a head here pretty soon. So
yeah. Okay, cool. That was super fast.
We didn't really review anything, so like.
IO. Okay, so yeah, let's start with mod and see what's in this module. Okay, starting at the top, copy n. It takes a reader and a writer and a size and copies at most n bytes. I just want to look what this function actually looks like.
So all of this code is and interfaces, might have changed since I wrote it, but for the most part, this is all ported directly from Go, and I have to say this is like what the Go people did. Like this is the central concept in Go. Go is like the Plan 9 Unix people, and Unix is all about file descriptors, and this reader-writer interface is like the modern version of file descriptors, like abstract streams, right? Very simple, very well thought out, and all of these combinators like copy n are great abstractions to build on top of. And yeah, generally, I think most of these things are probably pretty okay just because they've been copied directly, but we should go over them.
Yeah, so one thing that stands out to me is this is async, and there is no sync counterpart, even though we have sync writer and sync reader.
Yeah.
And this is actually gonna come up a lot in this module, the DIO module, because of the like sync and async version of all the interfaces. So I guess all of them should have a sync counterpart as well. And also like as SRC instead of R to make it consistent with other stuff in the library.
I mean, as to the sync thing, I would say, yes, probably they would also need that, but those are omissions, and so they could always be added later. As for the R and various parameter names, those are also come from Go, and I think R is totally reasonable in this situation.
Sure, but like we want consistency, right? And you got R here and reader here, and we got Dino copy SRC and DST, so
Okay.
should probably be just unified.
Okay, fine.
I also wonder if, like we have the dino.copy function, we could just add a third optional parameter to that. Possibly.
Yeah, and I think we even discussed it at some point.
Yeah.
Okay, let's keep moving and we'll see where we want.
Just one more thing about this. Dino copy apparently already has a options third, like an options bag for the buffer size.
Oh, really?
So yeah, would be like a one line change to add it to that. But
wait, you mean it already has it already does copy n, is what you're saying?
It doesn't do copy n, but it already has an options bag. So adding this would be very simple.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's one less function, right? I guess that would make sense.
Okay.
It is a little unfortunate that Dino copy is in the core library and not in this IO module.
Yeah.
I wonder if we could remove that.
For 2.0.
Yeah, so maybe one of the notes here should be that Dino copy should be moved out of here. And if I remember correctly, I believe that was moved into the Dino namespace to support fetch downloads, because fetch downloads were done with like readers and writers originally, and we needed copy for some reason there. So potentially, because fetch has been rewritten, we don't need it built into Dino anymore. I think it's a pure JavaScript function.
We don't need it for fetch anymore.
Right.
Okay, so probably something for 2.0.
Yeah.
We cannot remove Dino copy right now. Okay, moving on. Read the limited bytes from a reader. So I think this is a basis for the read lines function. One thing which is like quality of life that I can see here is maybe this dalim param could be a string instead of uint array, and we could just, encode it in the function. But this is purely like quality of life change.
If I may interject, if you look down 4 lines, you already have that function. It's read string to lim.
Right. Okay. So this yields bytes and that yields strings. So
yeah,
that is fine then. So it returns async iterable iterator. And again, probably a sync version would be useful as well. So sync version could actually, instead of reader, just take uint8 array, because sync reader is essentially uint array.
No, I don't think so.
No.
The read string delimiter would be like that would just be a string dot split in that case. Like if the sync version of read string delimiter is just string dot split.
Right, yes.
A sync reader is not the same thing as a uint8 array, right? You're still streaming data through the system, right? You're still issuing multiple syscalls. So imagine you have like a really long file and you're iterating over chunks of this file and like splitting it up into bits.
Okay. Still, should we have a sync version or not?
Sure. I mean, I don't think we need to delay stabilization of this for that, though.
Okay. Read int, read big endian 32-bit integer from buff reader. I guess this is from Go as well.
Mm-hmm.
Though, why does it take buff reader?
Because if the thing that it's trying to read is not an integer, it has to return null. You can't just get rid of those bytes then. They still have to be stored somewhere. Because you can't always seek back.
Okay. Read lines, read strings line by line from a reader. If I recall correctly, there was an issue about line endings for this API. That there was a problem on Windows, I believe.
Yeah.
But it's being here.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
I
and
guess
this makes everything painful, right?
yeah. So I guess this API is fine as well. Probably could use a sync version as well.
Yeah.
Read long, read big endian 64-bit long from buff reader. So this is like read int, and read short, read 16-bit. Do we need little endian version?
Before we
back
get
to
into- yeah, read long.
back to read long.
64-bit.
Yeah, that
being
doesn't have
fine.
enough
Yeah.
precision.
That needs to
It should
return a
be a
big
big
int.
int.
64-bit. Yeah.
Yep.
Should we, the long and short names that like the C identifiers for various integer sizes is always a bit confusing. Like, well, what's a long? What's a short? And in Rust, they came up with this very clever type labels for various types of integers, I64, U64, that sort of labeling, which is pretty intelligible. Should we consider renaming these to read U64 or read I64 or something instead of
If
read
we want
long?
to go with like we have the array view buffers or array buffer views, which are uint8 array and u32 or uint32 array. Maybe we can just go with those names.
Oh yeah, that would be more consistent, right? Yeah. So what's a long in that? It's a
Big int.
U64.
Uint
No,
yeah,
it's-
uint64 or big int array. Maybe.
No, it's a big int.
Just on this, like the read long, could deal with a big int, but it forces it as a number at the end. If it's bigger than what's its number safe, it throws an error. So the documentation isn't wrong for the moment. It depends on what the implementation should be.
I think if you want a 64-bit integer, you probably want to have a full representation of that. Otherwise, we can call it 53.
Well, I'm just saying the current implementation right now is forcing it to number. So just saying it's not just like a documentation issue or.
Oh, the implementation is wrong. It's actually a read double, but
well, yeah.
So
I noted for read long that it should return big int instead of the number, and it needs to have docs updated. And I also noted that we should use the same API names as in array buffer view. Is that correct?
Yep.
Okay. Read string the lim. We already.
By the way, Bartek, for these notes, I know you've been keeping them kind of in comments on like some discussion thing. You know, it seems like it's going to, a lot of these things just get forgotten about and stuff, and having them in comments is maybe not the. I guess what I'm suggesting is maybe we could move. Sorry for digressing so heavily right here, but maybe we could move these notes into a text document in the STD repo itself, and just kind of check, like, just because this seems to be kind of a more long-term migration plan rather than a couple of items that we're kind of checking off. How do you feel about that?
I can make a markdown document out of it. No problem.
Yeah, and I still haven't done the notes from the last meeting, so I can add those to that.
Okay. Read string the lim. We already talked about it. Nothing to change here. Readable string from async iterator. So this is just a conversion utility, which is used quite heavily, I think. And
don't we have something like this built into the runtime?
Yeah, Dino.iterate takes an async iterator, and turns it into a reader or a writer or something along those lines.
Yes, this one is changing the built-in type into a readable string.
The iterator takes a reader and turns it into an async iterable iterator of tuned array. So not this.
Which is slightly different than a readable stream.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, like you can get an async iterable iterator from a readable stream.
Okay, sure. Should it? I mean, the name of this method is a bit of a mouthful. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay, sure.
I mean, that's better than trying to, remove a few letters. Okay, readers from stream reader. This should be renamed, I think. It should be reader from readable stream.
Readable stream reader.
Excuse me?
Reader from readable stream reader.
Sure.
I think just reader from readable stream, right?
It's not a readable stream, it's a readable stream reader. It's the thing that you get when you call get reader on a readable stream.
Oh my god.
And the best part of this is like this method isn't even necessary because like the get reader is also an async iterator, so you could have just used the method above. So I don't know. Oh wait, no, the above one does something else. Whatever.
Okay. Slice long to bytes. Slice number into 64 big endian byte array. And it looks like the typing is not here, which is probably a bug in DinoDoc. Oh, it's a default param.
Yeah, that looks really bad.
Yes.
Why doesn't it take typed arrays? And it returns a number array as well.
Is it a Go API?
I don't know.
Yeah, I think this is something that you can do with the async or no, with the readable stream. No, array buffer views. You can create a big int, what are they called? Whatever. You can create a big int thing, turn that into uint8 array, and get the elements from that.
So probably remove this altogether.
I would say so.
Yeah, you can do like find the index and then slice it up.
Or yeah.
Using the type,
And like this
arrays.
one also takes a number but it says it's long, so it should take, and the first thing it does is it turns the number into a big int. So
Yeah,
it should just take a big int. I don't like this API. Like we can do this fully with built-ins.
Yeah, I want to just remove this one.
Okay, sounds good.
I'm a little confused about this whole big Indian business here. So I guess these are supposed to be for like network protocol encodings. But obviously, like there's a lot of little Indian stuff in the world too. Like why do we only have functions for one of these?
Yeah.
So in the typed arrays, it's actually a boolean that you pass as the last parameter, which is, I think it's true for little Indian and false for big Indian, or the default. We could probably do the same here. So I know like an unnamed boolean isn't great, but at least it's kind of consistent.
So this also applies to the previous APIs like read long, read short, etc. They all should also be able to read little endian.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Probably.
I'd say so. And just use the same API that the array buffer views have.
Yeah.
Are these methods, do we actually, I'm wondering, do we even use these anywhere? Are these, I'm trying to grep for it, read long. It doesn't, oh, it's used in the WebSocket implementation.
Okay.
Yeah, so I suppose if we, how does it work in the Go, in Go? Do they just handle big Indian? Let me see, IO.
So in the meanwhile, writable stream from writer seems completely fine to me, but the writer from stream writer should be renamed to writer from writable stream writer.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a mouthful, but yeah. And then the stream spec started it, so we just have to keep rolling.
Yeah, to be completely honest, I don't even know if. No. Yeah, no. Yeah. Looks good.
Okay, so something more interesting now, buff readers and buff writers. So buff reader implements buffering for a reader object. This should probably be dino.reader to be less ambiguous.
Mhm.
Okay, so let's see. Constructor takes a reader and a size, though neither of these parameters is annotated. So the size is a number and there's a default buff size. Should that be explained in the docs? Probably it should.
Mhm.
The size of the buffer, right?
Yeah. Okay, then we have the methods. Size returns the size of the underlying buffer in bytes. So this is essentially what's given here.
Mhm.
Then we have buffered, which returns a number and has no dog. And I guess this is number of currently buffered bytes.
Yeah.
So it needs to have dogs.
One thing about size is that again in typed arrays, usually that would be like byte length. I know we use size because that's what Go used. So
Yeah. Also, this is a method, and with byte length, it's a
property, yeah.
property.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, you know, in array buffers, they distinguish from byte length and length because array buffers can be different.
Yeah, they can be basically arrays.
It can be arrays of various sizes of integers, right?
Yeah.
But in this case, we're only dealing with bytes. So I think size makes sense as long as it's
sure.
specified to be the bytes.
Yeah.
Which it is.
Okay, so the buffered method needs dogs. Then we have reset, which discards any buffered data, resets all state, and switches the buffered reader to read from R. I think this is pretty self-explanatory. Any comments?
Sure. I don't quite see the purpose of it because I feel like you would just create a new buff reader, but
You
if
don't
anybody
have
uses it.
like GC1 buffer from this one and then create another new one. I guess this is some kind of optimization that no one ever needed yet.
Sure.
Okay.
If Go has this method, whatever.
Then we have a read method that takes uint8 array and returns a promise of either a number or null. Reads data into P. It returns the number of bytes read into P. The bytes are taken from at most one read on the underlying reader, hence n might be less than len p. To read exactly len p bytes, use IO read full BP. This docs
exactly copied from Go.
It's completely outdated. So buff reader read needs to update docs. Other than that, I think this method is fine. There's just nothing really to be changed here. Okay, so then we have read full, reads exactly p length bytes into p. If successful, p is returned. If the end of the underlying stream has been reached and there are no more bytes available in the buffer, read full returns null instead. An error is thrown if some bytes could be read, but not enough to fill p entirely before the underlying stream reported an error or EOF. Any error thrown will have a partial property that indicates the slice of the buffer that has been successfully filled with data. Sure, again, probably just need to update docs a little because the formatting seems off. Then we have read byte, which returns a promise of number or null. I guess null is returned when EOF has been reached, so probably should be mentioned in docs. Then we have read string, reads until the first occurrence of delim in the input, returning a string containing the data up to and including the delimiter. If read string encounters an error before finding a delimiter, it returns the data read before the error and the error itself, often null. Read string returns error not equals nil if, yeah, this is...
Copied from Go.
Yes. And I guess this also behaves like read full, which can throw an error and it will have a partial property. So again, the docs need to be updated.
Since we had a read delim before that was taking a uint8 array, should we have an overload for this or something? There's a use case of not using a string for the delimiter.
Oh, right. So like read delim, which takes a uint array as a delimiter.
Yeah, I think there's a use case for it.
Yeah,
And then rename read string to read string delim.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Okay. Read line. Read line is a low-level line reading primitive. Most callers should use read string with new line as a delimiter instead, or use a scanner. Okay, this is also from Go. Read line tries to return a single line, not including the end of line bytes. If the line was too long for the buffer, then more is set and the beginning of the line is returned. The rest of the line will be returned from future calls. More will be false when returning the last fragment of the line. The return buffer is only valid until the next call of read line. I think this API is used in HTTP server or by proto text reader or something like this. But it definitely needs to have docs updated as well.
Yeah, what is that read line result thing?
Read line result is interface that has line and more.
Okay.
Seems superfluous. We could just return a tuple instead.
Well, I guess to be...
Go ahead,
Sorry,
Sebastian.
I was going to say to be consistent, like read full whatever that takes a uint array and write directly to it and then return a number or null. So we take green line would take the uint8 array that should be filled and return true or false or number or null if there's more. That interface thing seems to be inconsistent with the other one, right? So if you look at read and read full, for example.
So you're suggesting to take a parameter in here that would be uint8 array and instead just return true, false?
Well, or number null. I don't know which one is more useful. I didn't have time to. I didn't think about it more than this, but yeah, because the more is a true false, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Then yeah, true false probably good. A number or null is probably more consistent. But my point was this, yeah, like it's weird to have the line, that interface where when everything else takes a uint array and write directly to it.
It's a good point, but
I do know like uint array. Well, no, actually, it's not. No, sorry, go.
I can't argue for this interface specifically, but just kind of a meta argument is that this comes from Go, and they probably have a reason for constructing it this way, and also this read line is used in, I was just grepping for it. It's used in text proto and in CSV encoding and YAML and BufIO, or no, this. Anyway, it might be quite disruptive if we change that interface. And there may be some unintended consequences. I think we would have to look at the source code.
Yeah, so my only objection in here would be that this interface might be superfluous and we could get away without it, but not a big deal.
Yeah,
So
and the change
I'm
may
not-
be a next version thing.
I'm not super in favor of a tuple because those are relatively inefficient to deconstruct. But whatever, it's fine.
An unnamed object, though.
Last I heard, or I saw Matthias wrote a couple days ago that they had new optimizations for tuples in
Oh,
V8.
really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So you're not really happy with removing this interface and it should stay?
Like, I don't really understand what this interface is for, to be honest.
I think this is just an alias, so it's not defined in line, but
No, I mean this whole read line function.
it's for reading lines on HTTP requests mostly.
Okay.
Okay, I'm gonna note that I want it removed, but it's debatable. Moving on, read slice. It takes a delim, which is a number, and returns promise of uint8 array or null. Read slice reads until the first occurrence of delim in the input, returning a slice pointing at the bytes in the buffer. The bytes stop being valid at the next read. If read slice encounters an error before finding a delimiter, or the buffer fills without finding a delimiter, it throws an error with a partial property that contains the entire buffer. So again, the same error type that is used in other APIs. If read slice encounters the end of the underlying stream and there are no bytes left in the buffer, the rest of the buffer is returned. In other words, EOF is always treated as a delimiter. Once the buffer is empty, it returns null. Because the data returned from read slice will be overwritten by the next I/O operation, most clients should use read string instead. Sounds fair? So this is essentially a lower level compared to the read string.
Right. And so we talked about potentially renaming read string to read string delim. And would that mean that if we did that rename, maybe we should rename this to read delim?
Yeah, but the idea was that read delim took uint8 array, and this one takes just a number. So I guess only a single byte.
So maybe
Well,
read
and
byte
for
delim.
Sorry?
Maybe read byte delim. If we have read string delim.
Okay, well, it actually doesn't matter. That's probably read delim because read string, if the string is more than one character, is going to throw an error anyway. So then, therefore, read slice is not a, well, therefore the counterpart is not a uint8 array. It is just a number. So that's probably the method I was looking for. Now, can the name be more consistent? Maybe, yeah.
So you're saying that read string can only take a delim that has a length of 1?
Yeah, the delimiter has to have a line of a length of 1.
Yeah,
Otherwise, it throws an error. Yeah, so it can just be /n. It cannot be /r/n, for example.
Okay, of length 1. So I'm writing that down to add it to the docs because it's like unexpected. So the question now is, should this be renamed or not?
I would rename it if we keep the IO version like this. I mean, at least show that there's a relationship between the two. So this one would be read delim, and the other one would be read string delim. But yeah.
Is this method used a lot in the code base, read slice? Because to be honest, I haven't really seen it.
It's used in the multi-part parser, the mime multi-part.
Okay.
But that could also just use read string, I think.
Yes.
Oh wait, no, it can't because it needs it to not be uint8. It needs the result to be uint8 array, not a string. But it could probably use read delim instead with a single byte long uint8 array.
Sorry, come again?
Don't we have this read, what is that method called? Can you scroll up a little? Project, could you scroll up? I don't have the thing open. Oh wait, no, we don't have that. Never mind. Disregard my comment.
Well, I think you're thinking of the function read delim on the left.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah,
Right.
but again, this one can only take a single byte as a delimiter. And it also should be written in the docs.
I think the limitation kind of arbitrary that this can only take a single byte and the function can take a uint8 array. I feel we should just unify them all and have them all be able to take a uint8 array. Especially with this string one that it's only allowed to take a string of length 1. An emoji has like two characters length. And I want to be able to split on emojis, so now I can't.
So we should unify these two methods with read delim and read string delim, so they can handle strings that are longer than 1 and uint arrays instead of a single byte.
I think so.
Okay.
we can still have like a more efficient case for if the length is 1, but it can be internal optimization.
Okay, then we have buffReader peak. It takes a number and returns uint8 array or null. Peak returns the next n bytes without advancing the reader. The bytes stop being valid at the next read call. When the end of the underlying string is reached, but there are unread bytes left in the buffer, those bytes are returned. If there are no bytes left in the buffer, it returns null. If an error is encountered before n bytes are available, peak throws an error with partial property. So once again, as all the other methods. Sure, that sounds good to me. No changes, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have this static method called create. Return new buffReader unless R is buffReader.
Sure.
This sounds a bit funky to me.
I think it just checks if it's a buffReader and it returns itself if that's the case.
Yeah, this should be done in constructor. We don't need a separate method for it.
But then there's no way to create a buffReader of a buffReader, which I don't know if that's useful, but
buffReader from buffReader.
yeah, is that useful? I don't know. Probably not.
Probably not.
We should check if Go has something like this. Probably not.
Yeah, so I'm writing down that this create method should be merged into the constructor. I don't think it's worth having a separate method. Okay, then moving on, we got buffWriter.
It seems like that create method is unused, so you know, maybe we can just remove it if.
That's even better.
Yeah.
Okay, then buffWriter implements buffering for DinoWriter objects. If an error occurs writing to a writer, no more data will be accepted, and all subsequent writes and flash will return the error. After all data has been written, the client should call flash method to guarantee all data has been forwarded to the underlying demo writer. Pretty straightforward, although the docs could be polished a bit. Then we have a constructor that takes a writer and size number. By the way, look at this. Shouldn't this be linked to?
Yes, I assume what's happening that, like, if you look at the source, I assume we're deconstructing Dino internally. Yeah, if you like go all the way to the top.
We're adding type aliases.
Yeah, we can't deal with that. It's too complicated. We need type analysis for that.
Yeah, but we don't need those aliases. So
right.
They should just be removed.
Yeah.
Reader, writer, and writer sync. Okay. So we have reset, discards any unflashed buffer data, clears any error, and resets buffer to write its output to W. So this is the same as buffReader reset. You can recycle the underlying buffer not to GC this one and create a new one. Then we have flash. Flash writes any buffer data to the underlying IO writer. This needs to have docs updated. Then we have write. takes data, which is uint8 array, and returns promise of a number. Writes the content of data into the buffer. If the contents won't fully fit into the buffer, those bytes that can be copied into the buffer is the does this sentence make sense, or I just loop myself? Those bytes that are copied into the buffer. The buffer is the flash to the right. Yeah, this needs
This
to
is
be
bad sentence. Yeah.
And then we have static method called create, which I'm just going to say we want to remove.
Sure.
Okay, then we have, yeah.
I was just going to say, like, that kind of description for the write method could probably be resolved with like a bit more examples. Maybe something that I could do or whatever. Go and like add more coding example or something.
Yeah, I think every method in here should have at least a single example.
Yeah, it would make things a lot easier. Like it's easy to get lost into that language that after some length makes no sense.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, let's see.
Did we already look at abstract buff base? Was that the original buff thing that we were looking at?
No, we haven't, because it's not linked in here. But yeah, again, this is once this is not linked. Luca, can you take a look? So this one is not linked because it's not exported, but the methods are also not visible for the stuff that extends it.
Yeah, because it's not exported. The front end can't see that class because it's not exported. Doc doesn't show it.
Right, and we probably don't want to export this abstract buff base. Yeah, so this is shortcoming of DinoDoc.
Yeah, can be fixed, but requires effort.
Yeah.
But shouldn't we just inline that? Because that's like 6 lines.
I'm also for inlining that thing, but I'm also for at least filing a DinoDoc issue for this situation.
Like DinoDoc needs a complete rewrite that can handle things like this at some point. But yeah, the front end is like way too complicated right now. DinoDoc front end.
All right, so BuffWriter sync does exactly the same thing as BuffWriter, but it has write sync instead of write, which is synchronous. And it has flash, which is also synchronous. And my question here is that if flash is made flash instead of flash sync, shouldn't write sync be just named write?
Well, if write sync isn't called write sync, it won't implement the write sync thing, write sync trait.
Interface.
Interface.
Okay. And writer, okay, so I guess the writer sync has method named flash instead of flash sync, and that's why this discrepancy comes from.
Oh, I think that's fine.
Sure. So
is there a flusher interface?
No,
I don't think so.
Okay.
So remove BuffWriter sync create. We don't want that. And we got buffer full error. which extends error and takes the partial, which is uint8 array, and has property called name, which has no type. Oh, I wanted to go to source.
And I guess the Dino doc is a bit messed up, but it should also have a partial property.
Yeah, but this thing should already be like recognized by DinoDoc, that it should be inferred that this is a string.
You were still on like Dino 146 or something for the Dino doc website, so.
Oh, I see. And one thing is that does this actually set the name of the class to baffle error? I remember some time ago that we had to like do these.name equals something, otherwise it did not work properly.
No, I think that should work. I think we do that in other places as well.
Okay.
I think I'm going to check real quick.
So yeah, this needs some doc, an example. Then we have class called limited reader. Limited reader reads from reader, but limits the amount of data returned to just limit bytes. Each call to read updates limit to reflect the new amount remaining. Read returns null when limit is less or equal to 0, or when the underlying reader returns null. Is this a copy from Go as well?
Yeah. So basically, you have a file of 10 megabytes. You can create a new reader from that only reads the first megabyte.
Okay, yeah. So it needs an example. Then we have multi-reader, reader utility for combining multiple readers. This is definitely useful, but it needs an example and probably needs some notes on how the writes occur. Like if they're somehow ordered, or this is completely random, or whatever, just some kind of note to not be ambiguous. So multi-reader needs more docs and example. Okay, then we got partial read error, which has...
What is the use case for multi-reader, by the way?
For example, you want to interleave sub-process, standard out and standard error.
Oh, okay.
You'd pass both of them to this reader.
Right. And so it's kind of, I guess it does a promise.race on each of the sub-readers to...
Oh, this is strange.
No, this seems to read them one after the other, so append them to each other. Or not actually append them, but effectively.
Oh, I see. Yeah, it reads one and then the next.
It's useful to read like one after one. I mean, users can do that manually, equally simple.
I mean, it's could be useful. It's some combinator.
Yeah.
But I think the utility that you were describing is also useful. Like just merge a bunch of readers together.
We might already have that actually.
I assume this would interleave like multiplex concurrently.
Yeah, so this is probably this max async iterator or something from async module.
Yeah. So maybe we want to add a mux reader.
Yeah, but this one, to be honest, I don't like it. I don't see a purpose for it.
I mean, if it's unused, feel free to remove it. I think that can be said about anything in this any of these utilities.
Sure. Okay.
I don't know. I sure, but I think like that could be useful in some scenarios, like reading a bunch of files right after the other. It's easier if you can just like if you want to open 10 files and combine the 10 files into a single new file.
Yeah, but that would be this Max reader, not multi-reader.
Or
No, because
concat.
mux reader would interleave and multi-reader would concatenate.
Okay. So it needs to have better docs to explain what it does.
Or maybe
And
call it like
rename it to-
concat reader.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I was thinking the same.
Okay. Moving on, we've got partial reader, which has name and partial property. Then we've got string reader, which shows nothing. It extends Dino buffer.
I'm unsure why the doc can't display that.
I'm unsure what's the purpose of this reader. It essentially just encodes the string into array and then wraps it into Dino buffer.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think it's a utility function that is used in the tests somewhere. But I agree. I mean, it's not so useful.
I mean, this is a single line that is different from Dino buffer, so I'd say it doesn't warrant to be in STD. Like we had some utilities for reading strings from files or whatever, and we just removed them because it was essentially one-line wrapper around Dino APIs.
Yeah. And like if you want to import this thing, you have to import this entire 100-line file. Seems not so useful.
Then we have string writer utility for buffering string chunks. Takes a base that is a string and has write sync, and toString method.
So it's a writer that builds a string, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I feel like this is also just a thing that you can do with Dino buffer.
yes. And this API is pretty misleading. I mean, I can imagine it's used somewhere just because it implements writer and writer sync, but I'd say this is not something that should be in STD. Unless it's like it has a good use case throughout STD somewhere, but I doubt it.
If we really wanted to, we could also just add this toString method to buffer.
No, we discussed it before stabilization, and we did not do that because it overrides the default toString, and
Okay.
doing this in here like directly contradicts that idea.
Right. So let's get rid of it.
Okay, and yeah, we're done with this module. Already discussed, read line result. So I guess we're left with log module. There's also strings, but yeah, we already see that.
We looked at all the readers.
Yeah, I think we did.
Yeah.
Everything is just re-exported in module. Yeah.
Okay.
So log.
Maybe we could start by looking at the README example.
Sure. Okay, so maybe I will just say a few words first. I think this module was started by me as a loose port of Python's module. And it has been that way for like a year, maybe more. And then people started complaining about lacking functionality. And then people started just wanted to change interfaces all over. But the gist is that this module still does not work as expected because of top-level await. So there is like a default implementation of a logger, which, if I remember correctly, just prints something to console, to terminal, using console log without any special formatting. But then there's this setup method that allows to define like writing to file instead of console, or to TCP socket or whatever, and define different loggers, so you can have multiple instances. But there's a huge problem with it that if you import this module and then import some more code, like something else from STD or from Dinoland X, and that code uses log as well, it might start logging some stuff before you had a chance to configure it or to set up it. And to be honest, I don't have a good solution to this problem. It's just how JavaScript works with top-level await. Like, we cannot, import log here, then call setup, and then import the remaining files. So, to be honest, I'm not entirely sure how we could tackle this problem. Maybe it would be wise to check other node loggers that somehow work with top-level await, or maybe they don't. And
I don't think they do. Like, nobody's had top-level await until like Chrome just released it in '89, and Node has only had it for like 3 months.
Yeah, but Node has dynamic require, so kind of the same thing.
Well, dynamic require doesn't use the,
Well,
like, you don't await.
Require actually solves this problem because you can import your log as a first line, configure it, and then continue requiring or other stuff after you've configured the logger. But with Dino, not entirely sure how we can tackle it. I mean, this will work in most cases unless one of your dependency is not like behaving very well and just starts doing some stuff at top level before you had a chance to do something. So any suggestions or comments would be highly appreciated. I was hoping that Tim would be here tonight, as he wrote quite a few PRs for Logger, but doesn't seem so.
So I guess the question I have is like, well, log setup is returns a promise because the handler setup might return a promise also. So I guess it's to allow for some kind of like opening files or whatever.
Yeah.
I guess what I was thinking is like, could it be possible to remove this and have a kind of like buffer that we would write to instead? What, in case like the handler is not set up yet. So for example, if you need to
Okay,
open
so
a file,
you set up, everything is buffered, and only once you've set up, then the stuff is actually logged out.
maybe.
That has a problem that if you never call setup, the buffer will just keep growing.
So
Yeah,
the
but that's
opposite direction we might go is, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, I want my log output to be synchronous, not asynchronous at all. And so, you know, we could just force it all to be synchronous and not support other use cases.
I think I did try that, but there was one case that you actually needed to be async because of some APIs. Probably for TCP stream.
yeah.
Yeah, like Dino Connect, it's only asynchronous. You cannot synchronously connect to TCP socket.
But I do feel like it's a performance issue. If you want to log things in the background without affecting performance, you wouldn't want to sync it. So I don't think that's the solution. Now, I mean, I like what we were saying is like, yes, a buffer would fill, but I guess that's a user issue. We can, you know, throw warnings or things. I guess there are ways to deal with this, or have like a small buffer that's going to start writing itself over if you don't fix it. You know, if you don't set it, if you don't read it ever, you're just going to keep writing on itself to avoid like any memory leak. So you take, it would just have a fixed size just in case. I mean, it shouldn't be very long anyway. Just in case, start like buffering logs, and then when everything's set up, it'll flush and it'll disappear, more or less. I don't know. It's just an idea.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm having a feeling like this module should be researched a bit more with available solutions in the community. I know there's probably like 50 different logging libraries for Node, but we could probably take a look at 3 or 5 most popular one and like compile something that will work for Dino with similar functionality. Obviously, we won't include everything because some people like emojis or colors or whatever, but some kind of robust solution would be pretty welcome.
Yeah, I mean, that seems fine. So, you know, rather than maybe reviewing this API in detail, what we could do is kind of list some requirements that we might have. Obviously, having a logging, to be honest, I haven't used this, but it seems like this module is used by a lot of people, and it seems like a useful thing. Maybe we could just write down some of the requirements that we have for it.
Sure.
I mean, does it need to write to a network, for example? Because that would certainly change the design of it.
Right. On the other hand, we probably, like, the question is, should it be just an implementation and you have to live with it or use some other module? Or should it be somehow extensible? So if you need something fancy, you can just write additional handler or class or something that would handle that. One example that comes to my mind is like Sentry style reporter that might want to collect all of the logs and push them somewhere while also printing them to the console.
I don't know what Sentry is.
It's a service that collects exceptions and whatever. You install a handler, and it will add a hook to when the errors are thrown, so they report it. Although in Dino that probably won't work because Dino dies on uncaught exceptions. Okay, so yeah, maybe let's just write down what this module should do.
I mean, as far as I'm concerned, and my concerns are probably not the same as other people's, but like I would just want, you know, an easy way to have a nicely formatted log, and you know, maybe have some structured debug symbol in there, and you know, maybe some colors and a timestamp. But like basically, I would always want to be logging to standard out, and if I was writing to a file, I would probably just redirect there.
Yeah, but there's one nice functionality that is already supported, which is rotating file handler. This is super useful, especially for servers, I think.
Okay, yeah, I guess that's useful.
I don't know. I feel like you can just pipe your std error into a file or pipe it through some thing that rotates log files. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I guess. Yeah, I guess it's kind of a matter of what we're going for. I mean, we could try to be very minimal and simple here and just have something that kind of formats some logs simply, you know, basically some sugar on top of console log. And let people build stuff on top of that. Or we could try to provide stuff like this, rotating file handler, which certainly somebody somewhere wants, but you know, a lot of people might not want, because you know, in GCP we don't need that. It deals with that itself.
I guess one of the questions we want to ask is like, when we build things for STD, do we build it because we want as much reach as possible and like make as many people, well, do we want to make it more accessible, like make Dino and everything more accessible, or they're just like some low level utilities? Because sometimes we have the conversation where we're like, oh, well, this is easy, just one line, but we know it, but someone who is less comfortable with the subject might not know it, right? And so we have that comment about we can just pipe console log into like another tool that's going to rotate file. It's true, but then
But then you're on Windows, and then you can't do that.
Yeah, but anyway, the question is just this: like, who are we trying to reach with this? And that should kind of dictate the answer. Like, if we're trying to make this as accessible as possible, then it needs to have rotating file inside. If we're trying to make it just like basic, and then like we expect people to write on top of it, and we do have a pretty active community, well then, you know, it has to be basic, and then rotating file is removed, you know? Does that make sense?
Yeah. I don't know, like this.
One of the modules that is hard to design so one can cater to all needs.
But yeah, exactly. Like this is a type of thing that can like will never end. You know, obviously, like feature requests will never end, and that's why what I'm saying is like when we're designing STD, we want to decide who we're targeting it to.
So actually the person most interested in this module just joined us, so maybe we can hear another opinion.
Hello, everyone.
Hello. We're just discussing the log module. So like perfect timing on your side. Yeah. So we've just discussed the problem with that whole setup thing, that it's like out of place when there's top level await, and trying to discuss the scope of this module. And there are different opinions. Some of us think that it should be simpler than it is, so no file handlers, no socket handlers, just console. Yeah, I'm completely on the line with this one, even though it's my child, so to speak. But I'm leaning towards what Ryan said, with simpler module, with just like basic formatting, maybe some colors, and the file handling should be done outside of this module. Don't know, so please give me a hand, someone.
Like, I just want to bring up that, so Go has this log module as well. But from my experience, like nobody really uses it because it's way too limited in what it can do. And everybody just uses a third-party logger anyway because of that.
Yeah, so I mean,
So
the idea that we can't find, yeah, I mean, this does kind of seem to be the sort of situation where different people want different things. Some people just want a timestamp and some colors, and other people want it to forward their logs to Datadog and, you know, rotate some file, and that like you can't really build one on top of the other necessarily. So maybe we should, I mean, I'll just throw out there the suggestion. What if we just removed this entirely and moved it to /x?
Yeah, I think that's the safest bet. Not like remove it because it's not useful, but we don't have enough experience and like feedback. So kind of like incubate it in /x, and once it's like widely used and there are some APIs that work, we can then start the discussion about moving it into STD again.
yeah, if you look at, for example, Dart, they also have a log package, but it's not part of the standard library. It's maintained by the core team, but inside of the public module registry. So it's like still sort of like the official log package, but it's not part of the standard library. Might be interesting as well.
Yeah, I mean, this is what we already have is pretty featureful. I guess the problem is that it just doesn't play nicely with like potential use cases. So yeah, maybe it's just safer to migrate it to a separate module and like reevaluate next year if it should come back to STD.
I'm okay with that. Are there any strong objections to moving this out of STD and into /x? Going once, going twice. Okay.
So
sold to /x for $0.
yeah, but who's gonna maintain it then?
I think we will continue to maintain it. So I think we can just start a new repo and drop this code in there, hook it up to /x, and yeah, I mean, if it thrives, it thrives. If you know, if it's not thriving, then, you know, hopefully other people will start their own log packages and solve that. But this, yeah, it seems a bit ambiguous, and so I think the safe bet would be to. Oh,
Can I just throw in that I did a rewrite of this module, which was more class based, and so for custom log levels and the logger as a class instance instead of a function call. Is this something that's going to be merged, or is this like of any interest for this module?
is this an open PR that you've got, or was?
I think it's closed now because the STD has moved, but I could reopen it, I guess.
I mean, first of all, Tim, I mean, how do you feel about this moving out of STD, just in the abstract?
Well, I would agree with that. It's kind of the same problem with the datetime module we have, which is at some point there will be. It can't be just how do you say that? I don't know how to say it. So you will have, it will have some features which are opinionated, I guess. And so I'm not against moving it out from STD, but I could imagine having a third kind of module thing like between X and STD, which is what you suggested, is maintained by Dino, but it's like in between. So it's opinionated, but not in STD.
Yeah, so like goes EXP, like experimental thing.
Right. Are you like on a farm, Casper? What's?
It's morning. It's the Philippines.
Oh wow. Okay.
I looked at Team's PR some time ago, but it was like a huge PR with, I think, more than 1,000 line of changes. So I'm not against it, and I think that the ideas Team had were good. And moving it to separate repo will just allow to iterate on it faster, because we won't have to care that much about not breaking STD from one release to the other completely. Obviously, we'll have to keep this module for like a month or something, so people have time to migrate. But yeah, I'd be very, very interested in like iterating on it outside of STD. For example, I think the Dino drivers, this organization has like 5 repos already for DB drivers, and they probably use log in some places. So it might be a good place to like try out and coordinate this effort for log module.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And also, my question would be, should we do it in a way that it is extendable? So if you want to write your own, let's say, log module, so you can use it this as a base and extend it, or do we want to have an opinionated module? Right. Because we had the discussion about I think it was the critical function, where I said that this is like every other function is similar to what console uses, and critical is named critical, but in some other modules it's called fatal, or so how we want to go about that.
Right. So just before you joined, we talked about this whole extensibility, and did we have like a concrete conclusion about it or not. I'm actually in favor of this being extensible, but not if it like makes the whole module super complex. If it can be done, you know, lightweight and not too opinionated, then I would be for the extensibility. But if it means we need to write like 5,000 lines of code just to handle every possible case that might be extended, then probably not.
Yeah. Well, I think I did in the one PR. I think I did like an example in the README, if I'm not wrong, how I would suggest it to be extendable. But well, I'm not sure what like I wanted to know what other opinions are about that.
Tim, can you reopen this PR in new repo so we can like discuss it on living organism and make decision then? Because right now it's quite like we don't have strong opinions right now.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't seem like anyone is too pushy, so
sure.
Let's just compare it.
So let me see, where is it? So I want to I should reopen it as a, how do we do that? Factor.
Can you hit me up later on Discord? I can help you with reopening the PR in new repo.
Sure.
Okay. So I guess there's no need right now to go through the methods, and we're almost out of time anyway. So should we call it?
Yeah, so I think we're done here, but just to confirm, so the conclusion is that we're going to look for a new home for this outside of STD because we think that there's many situations where you would want an opinionated logger, or some people want an opinionated logger, but other people just want something simple, and so seems to make sense to just kind of punt this out, maybe temporarily, maybe forever, but maybe not. We in a way that that we don't need to worry about maintaining its API forever.
Yeah. Sounds good to me.
So yeah, maybe we can ask around, and I guess the question is just, should like Dinoland maintain this the fork of this log module that we're going to split out, or should we look for a new maintainer, maybe with this what was the group you were mentioning? The
Dino drivers.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's just discuss it on Discord. That most of the people from Dino drivers are there, so.
Right. So yeah, I guess the first step would be to make a PR that like makes a deprecation message here, and then we'll try to find some new home for it.
Okay. All right, we covered a lot of stuff today. Thank you everyone for coming, and see you in 2 weeks, I guess.
Thanks, Bartek.
Yeah, thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Luca, Bartek,
Yes.
we're left.
Oh, we're still
Oh.
here.
So just going. There was the web crypto PR, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And
Let's